Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, or at least it started off that way. I had spent most of the day doing what grandmothers do best, baking cookies, folding laundry, and picking up after the mess my husband, John, had left in the kitchen. It was a peaceful routine I had grown comfortable with over the years. But as I sat down to enjoy my tea, my phone buzzed with a message from my daughter, Sarah. It was about my grandson, Ben. Ben's game is at 5:30 today. Could you come by to cheer him on? He'd love it. Ben, at 11, had recently joined a local soccer team. I wasn't much of a sports enthusiast, but Sarah had always insisted that I get involved with Ben's activities. "He needs to know you care," she'd said. I didn't mind. I loved spending time with him, even if I didn't quite understand the rules of soccer. After a quick check on my schedule, I decided to go. The game was held at a local park, and as I arrived, I noticed the usual buzz of excitement. Parents were chatting, kids were running around, and there was the familiar smell of fresh grass. In concessions stand popcorn. I found a spot along the sidelines, just behind the ropes where the parents gathered. Ben spotted me immediately and waved, his face lighting up when he saw me. I waved back and gave him a thumbs up. I watched with a smile as he ran onto the field with his teammates, ready for the game to start. As I sat there, I couldn't help but notice how focused he was on the game. It reminded me of the days when my own children had been that age, full of energy and ambition. A part of me wished John had been able to come, but he had work, as usual. It was just me, Ben, and the crowd. The coach, a man named Derek, was one of the most charismatic figures on the field. He was in his early 40s, tall with dark hair and a confident demeanor. He wasn't the type of coach who shouted from the sidelines. Instead, he seemed to encourage the kids with a quiet, steady presence. I had only met him a few times before at the parent-teacher meetings, in one of Ben's birthday parties, but there was something about him that piqued my curiosity. He always seemed to be around Ben, giving him extra attention, offering him words of encouragement after every play. The game itself was thrilling, filled with energy and excitement. Ben played exceptionally well, his quick reflexes and speed, helping his team score the winning goal. I clapped proudly from the sidelines as the whistle blew. I could see Ben's excitement as he ran to join his teammates, his face flushed with joy. As the crowd began to disperse, I made my way toward the field to find Ben. He ran up to me, a big grin on his face. "Did you see that, Grandma?" "I scored the winning goal," he said, his eyes sparkling. "I saw, sweetheart. You were amazing out there." I gave him a hug, feeling proud and grateful for moments like these. Just then, Coach Derek approached me with a smile, wiping his forehead with a towel. "Great job out there, Ben," he said, patting my grandson's back. "You really carried the team tonight." "Thanks, Coach." Ben replied enthusiastically. Derek then turned to me with that same warm smile. "Mrs. Harris, I'm so glad you could make it today. Ben's really come a long way. I can see a lot of potential in him." His tone was friendly, but there was something about his look, the way his eyes lingered on me for just a moment too long, that made me feel uneasy. Still, I smiled back, not wanting to make anything of it. "Thank you, Coach," I said. "Ben's been practicing a lot. It's wonderful to see him so dedicated." "Yes, he's got a lot of heart," Derek agreed, then glanced around as if gauging the crowd. "It's getting late. Would you like me to walk you to your car? I know it's getting dark." His offer caught me off guard. I hadn't expected it, but he was being so polite, and I didn't want to seem rude. Besides, he was a coach, and it seemed like something a coach might do to be helpful. "That's very kind of you, but I'll be all right," I said, giving him a smile. "I parked not too far away." Derek stepped closer, his eyes intense. "I insist," he said, his tone soft but insistent. "It's no trouble at all. I wouldn't want you walking alone in the dark, especially with the way the park clears out. It's really no bother." There was a pause, and I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. It was odd. This wasn't just a simple offer of politeness anymore. Something about his insistence felt off. I could sense his proximity. The way he stood just a little too close, his hand resting on his hip in a way that seemed too casual. His smile, though warm, didn't quite reach his eyes. For a moment, I hesitated. I felt the hair on the back of my neck prickle, a sudden sense of discomfort that made me want to decline and leave quickly. But I also didn't want to seem paranoid or ungrateful. After all, he was just trying to be kind. Well, all right then, I said, nodding. Though my voice was more uncertain than I'd like to admit, Derek smiled and offered his arm in a gesture of politeness, guiding me toward the parking lot. As we walked, he started talking about the team, telling me about Ben's progress and his plans for the next few practices. His voice was calm and friendly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was as if he was trying just a little too hard to engage me in conversation, steering the topic to personal matters, asking about my family and my life outside of Ben's soccer games. I responded politely, but I kept my answers short, hoping he would take the hint. The more we walked, the more I couldn't ignore the sensation creeping up my spine, the feeling that I was walking in the presence of someone who was no longer just being friendly. His proximity felt stifling now, and I wished the walk was over. As we reached my car, Derek stopped and turned toward me, blocking the door slightly. His smile softened, and he looked at me with a strange intensity. "You—" "No, Mrs. Harris, Ben's really lucky to have you in his life," he said, his voice dropping slightly lower. "It's not often I see a grandmother so involved." I nodded awkwardly, trying to step around him and get into the car. "Thank you, Coach. I do my best for Ben." Before I could reach the handle, Derek's hand gently rested on my arm, a little too firmly for comfort. "You've done a lot for Ben, but I've been thinking." His voice trailed off as he gazed at me, his eyes lingering too long on my face. "Maybe you need someone to look out for you too. Someone who can be there for you in the way you've always been for Ben." His words hit me like a wave of ice cold water. I could feel my heart race in my chest, and I immediately jerked away from him, finally breaking the spell his words seemed to cast on me. My hand was now on the door handle, and I made no hesitation in opening it. "I'm fine, thank you, Derek," I said firmly, my voice steady but shaking slightly. "I think it's best if I get going now." Derek seemed taken aback for a moment, his hand still hovering in the air as if unsure of how to respond. He finally smiled again, though it didn't feel genuine this time. "Of course, Mrs. Harris, I understand. But remember, I'm always here if you need anything." I nodded quickly, sliding into the car and locking the door behind me, my hands trembling slightly as I started the engine. I glanced at Derek through the window, who was still standing by my car, watching me intently as I pulled away. My mind raced. The words he had spoken, his actions, his presence, it was all so unsettling. I kept trying to rationalize it. Perhaps I had misread the situation. Maybe it was just his way of being kind, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The whole drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Derek had crossed a line. His kindness had seemed genuine at first, but his insistence, his lingering glances, the way he had stood in front of my car, everything about it made me uncomfortable. It felt like he had been testing the waters, seeing just how much he could get away with. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. It wasn't just my imagination. Something had felt off, and I was going to trust that feeling, no matter how much I tried to dismiss it. I had spent too many years learning to trust my instincts, and I wasn't about to ignore them now. For the first time since the game, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. But it wasn't just because of Derek's actions. It was the realization that sometimes people we think we know, people we trust, can have hidden intentions, and that thought scared me more than anything. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that Derek had been nothing more than a concerned coach trying to be kind. But the way he looked at me, the way he lingered too long after the game, his touch on my arm, it all gnawed at me. I knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't just ignore my instincts. The next practice was on a Tuesday afternoon, and I decided I wasn't going to let Derek's behavior keep me from supporting Ben. But this time, I would be more cautious. I would watch for any signs, pay attention to my surroundings, and make sure I didn't find myself in a situation that felt uncomfortable again. When I arrived at the soccer field that afternoon, I kept my distance from Derek. He was busy talking to the team, giving instructions for the upcoming drills, but his eyes kept drifting toward me, always lingering just a little too long. I kept my gaze on Ben, watching him practice, but my mind was elsewhere. Was I being paranoid? Or had Derek's behavior really been a warning sign? Either way, I wasn't willing to find out the hard way. After practice, as the kids were gathering their things and getting ready to leave, I saw Derek walking toward me, his usual warm smile on his face. He greeted me like any other day, but there was an intensity to his greeting that made me uncomfortable. "Mrs. Harris," he said, his voice smoother than usual. "Ben played great today. He's really improving." I nodded, trying to keep the conversation light. He's been working hard. He loves being out there. Derek stepped a little closer, his posture leaning toward me as if he wanted to say something more. "You know, I've been thinking," he began, his voice soft. "You've been so strong for Ben, but I wonder ... who's looking out for you? You've had a rough time since Alex passed. Maybe you need someone to help you, to be there for you, someone who understands." The way he said it made my skin crawl. There was an almost possessive undertone to his words, and I immediately felt the need to put some space between us. I shifted my weight back and forced a smile, trying to keep my composure. "I'm fine, Derek. Really," I said, the words more forceful than I intended. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm managing just fine." Derek didn't seem to take the hint. He smiled, but it wasn't the warm, friendly smile I'd once seen on him. This one was colder, more calculating, and there was something unsettling about the way his eyes never left mine. "You don't have to do everything on your own, Sarah," he said, his voice lowering just a touch. "You know I could be there for you if you ever need someone. I can take care of you just like Alex would have wanted." I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. I took a quick step back, the distance between us growing. "No, Derek," I said firmly, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "That's not appropriate. You need to leave me alone." He froze, his expression faltering for a moment, but then that cold smile returned. "Of course," he said softly, his tone almost like a whisper. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, but I'm here if you change your mind." I turned away quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to see that smile again, or feel the weight of his gaze on me. I had to get away from him, and I had to do it fast. The rest of the evening was a blur. I watched Ben pack up his things, all the while my mind raced. I had to tell someone about Derek. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. I was scared, but I knew I couldn't ignore what was happening. He wasn't just being overly friendly. He was crossing lines, and I wasn't going to let him manipulate me any longer. When I got home that night, I called Sarah. She picked up on the first ring, sounding distracted. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "No, Sarah, everything is not okay," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I need to talk to you about Derek. I don't think he's been acting right, and I'm really starting to feel uncomfortable around him." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. "I don't know how to explain it," I said, pacing in the kitchen, "but he's been offering to help me in ways that feel ... off. Today, he even told me he could take care of me like Alex would have wanted. It felt wrong, Sarah, like he's crossing boundaries." Sarah went silent for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was low and serious. "Mom, that doesn't sound right at all. Have you told anyone else?" "I haven't," I admitted, my voice tight. I didn't know how to bring it up, but I can't ignore this anymore. I think he's becoming obsessed. It's like he sees my vulnerability as an opportunity. "Mom, you need to be careful," Sarah said. "I'll talk to Ben's dad and we'll get in touch with the team's manager. This is not something to take lightly. You need to protect yourself." The conversation left me feeling a little better. Sarah understood, and I knew she'd do everything she could to help, but the fear still lingered. I wasn't sure if Derek would listen, if he'd back off, or if he'd escalate. I knew he had crossed the line once, but I had no idea how far. He was willing to go to get what he wanted. The next few days were tense. I avoided Derek at all costs. I didn't go to any more practices or games, knowing that he might show up and try to engage me again. I kept my phone on silent, ignoring his repeated messages and calls. I even asked Ben to let me know if Derek tried to talk to him, though I tried not to let Ben know how serious things had become. One night, after weeks of avoiding him, I finally received a message from Derek. It was simple, but it chilled me to my core. "I know what you're doing, Sarah, but you can't keep running from me. I'll always be here. You can't get away." The message felt like a direct threat, and that was the breaking point. I knew then that I had to take further action. The restraining order I had been putting off wasn't just a precaution, it was necessary. Derek had crossed a line, and I was done letting him control my peace. The following week, I called the police and explained everything: how Derek had been acting, the messages he'd sent, and how I felt increasingly threatened by his behavior. They were very responsive, taking my case seriously, and they assured me that they would have a chat with Derek. I was terrified, but I also knew this was the only way to ensure my safety. The officer I spoke with advised me to keep a log of any further interactions with Derek, and they would take immediate action if he violated the restraining order. "We'll do everything we can to make sure you're protected," he said, his voice comforting. I wasn't sure if it would be enough, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was regaining control. The fear was still there, but I had made the decision to stand up for myself, and I wouldn't allow Derek or anyone else to intimidate me into silence. As time went on, Derek did keep his distance, but the knowledge that he could still be watching, lurking in the background, haunted me. It wasn't just about his obsession with me anymore, it was about my ability to protect myself and my family from his increasingly dangerous behavior. The road ahead wasn't easy, but I knew I had made the right decision in facing Derek's disturbing advances. And I would do whatever it took to protect my family from someone who once seemed so trustworthy, but had turned into a source of fear and danger. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about reclaiming my life, my security, and my peace of mind. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The weeks that followed the restraining order were difficult. Though Derek kept his distance, there was an undeniable tension in the air. Every time I went out, whether to the grocery store or a family gathering, I had the constant feeling that someone was watching me. I couldn't shake the sense that Derek was still lingering in the shadows, waiting for his moment to make his move. Despite the legal actions, I felt like my world was shrinking. The fear of running into him during a game or at a team meeting made every outing feel like a potential encounter I wasn't prepared for. The quietness of my house, which once felt peaceful after John's passing, now felt like a cage. I wanted to protect my children and regain some sense of normalcy, but Derek's presence, his shadow in my life, kept me from truly feeling safe. Sarah, my daughter, was incredibly supportive. She helped manage the situation with Ben's team, working behind the scenes to ensure that Derek would no longer have any contact with us. She'd gone so far as to approach the team manager and inform him about Derek's behavior, urging him to take action. She and Ben's dad had made it clear that Derek would no longer be welcome around the children. But even with all of this, I could still feel the cold, lingering fear in my chest. Derek's persistence had shown me that just because someone was no longer physically around didn't mean they weren't still a threat. One evening, as I was sitting alone in the living room, I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart skipped a beat. It was late, too late for a normal visitor. I stood frozen for a moment, wondering who it could be. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. I cautiously approached the door, peering through the peephole. My stomach sank. There, standing in the dim light, was Derek. He was smiling, but there was something unsettling about the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. His hands were in his pockets, and he seemed to be waiting, as if expecting me to open the door. I took a deep breath, my heart racing. My first instinct was to call the police, but I didn't want to give him any more power over me than he already had. I stepped back from the door, trying to think through the best course of action. I couldn't let him in. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone and quickly sent a message to Sarah. "Derek's here. Please help. I don't know what to do." Seconds later, my phone buzzed with a call. It was Sarah. "Mom, don't open the door," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "I'm calling the police right now. Just stay inside, lock everything, and don't engage with him." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I felt my legs tremble with fear, but I kept my voice steady. "I won't. I promise. Just hurry." I backed away from the door, pressing myself against the wall, as if that could somehow shield me from Derek's presence. I heard him knock again, a little harder this time, then a low voice calling out, "I know you're there, Sarah. I just want to talk. I've been thinking about you, and I know you've been avoiding me. I don't want things to end this way. We can still figure this out." Minutes later, I heard the sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. A knock on my door signaled the arrival of the officers. I rushed to open it, relief flooding my chest when I saw the two uniformed officers standing there. "Ma'am, we're here to help. Are you all right?" One of them asked, his tone professional yet compassionate. I nodded, stepping aside to let them in. "He's out there," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's been coming by trying to talk to me. I just don't know what to do anymore. I feel like he's not going to stop." The officers nodded, taking my statement. They assured me they'd take care of the situation, and they immediately went out to confront Derek. I could hear the conversation through the door. Derek's voice rising in frustration, then the officer's calm. Authoritative responses. It only took a few minutes before Derek was escorted away, his defiant expression disappearing as he was led to the police car. I stood frozen, still feeling the weight of the encounter in my bones. I had done what I needed to do, but I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Derek hadn't been arrested, he was just being warned. There was a part of me that wondered if he'd take this warning seriously, or if he'd try to find another way back into my life. The officers gave me their card and reminded me that I could call them anytime. But I knew that, for now, I was safe. The relief of having him gone from my doorstep was bittersweet. I couldn't help but think about the life I once had, the life with Alex. The simple joys of watching Ben play soccer, of spending time with my family without this constant cloud. A fear hanging over us. The next few days were a blur. Derek didn't show up again, but his absence didn't bring the peace I'd hoped for. I felt like I was living in a holding pattern, waiting for the other shoe to drop. What if Derek had decided that the police wouldn't stop him? What if he came up with another way to get to me? I couldn't afford to feel complacent. I had to be vigilant. I kept Ben away from practice for the next couple of weeks. It wasn't just about keeping him safe, it was about giving myself the space to breathe, to regain a sense of control over my own life. I didn't want him around Derek anymore, even if he had been a part of our lives for years. It wasn't easy. Ben noticed the change. "Grandma, why aren't you coming to my games anymore?" he asked one afternoon, his face full of confusion. "I miss you cheering for me." I felt a pang of guilt, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "there's just been some things going on that I need to take care of. I'm doing it to protect you. And I'll be there when I can. I promise." I could see the sadness in his eyes, but he didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded, his understanding far beyond his years. I had to keep him safe, even if that meant sacrificing some of the moments we used to share together. A week later, I received a call from Sarah. "Mom, I've talked to the team manager. Derek's been let go. The team decided he's no longer a good fit for the program. No more practices, no more games. It's over. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Part of me wanted to shout in triumph, to feel the weight of this chapter finally closing. But another part of me felt sad for Ben, for the friendships. That had been lost, and for the coach who had once seemed like a trustworthy figure, now revealed to be someone unrecognizable. "Thank you, Sarah," I whispered into the phone. "I couldn't have done this without you." The feeling of finality washed over me, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself exhale. It wasn't just about the game anymore or Derek's disturbing presence in my life. It was about finding my footing again, reclaiming my strength, and moving forward. Simon had been a shadow in our lives, but he was no longer welcome in our world. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could truly begin to rebuild.